The gavel strike echoed in the sterile, air-conditioned courtroom, sealing my fate, divorce finalized. I was 45, financially ruined, and stripped of nearly everything I had built over 20 years. But the real moment of destruction wasn't the judge's decree. It was the cold, sickening realization that the lawyer who had systematically dismantled my life, the slick, polished predator Mark Halstead, was doing so not just for a hefty fee, but for a perverse kind of collaboration with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Mark Halstead, Eliza's legal counsel, was her secret, arrogant lover. They hadn't just separated our lives. They had performed a calculated financial assassination, working together to steal $4.2 million from the very foundation of my business. The future was nothing but debt and darkness, until a single, cold, life-altering call from a mysterious law firm in Anchorage, Alaska, cut through the darkness and promised a vengeance. Built on my enemy's own arrogance, my name is Thomas Tom Vance. For 2 decades, my life was defined by the bedrock of trust and the precision of geology. I ran Vance Geotech, a highly respected consulting firm specializing in complex environmental impact assessments. My net worth was comfortably north of $6 million. I believed in systems, in verifiable data, and in my marriage. That belief, that trust, was the single largest liability I carried. When Eliza filed for divorce, her choice of lawyer was telling: Mark Halstead. Known for his brutal, scorched-earth corporate litigation tactics, the divorce was not a separation. It was a military campaign designed to leave me defenseless. They executed every dirty trick in the book, fabricating claims of my professional negligence, intentionally undervaluing assets I was allowed to keep, and strategically inflating Eliza's supposed emotional and financial distress claims. Mark's strategy was chillingly effective. He argued that Vance Geotech, my life's work, was built entirely on marital assets, ultimately stripping me of $4.2 million in liquid business capital and leaving me with the shell of a company in crippling debt. I was left with a failing company, my battered old Ford pickup, and a tiny, depressing apartment rented above a noisy bakery. The $4.2 million theft. The money was transferred in 3 meticulously planned tranches into a shell corporation named Aurora Holdings, registered to Eliza. But the intricate transfer paperwork was engineered by Mark. I suspected the affair due to their unnaturally close collaboration. But the legal fees and the stress had left me without the resources to hire a private investigator. The undeniable, physical proof arrived 3 months later. I was retrieving a final, forgotten hard drive from my old office, which I could barely afford to keep running, and found a shared calendar printout tucked into a file folder. It detailed secret, non-legal meetings, weekends in the Hamptons, shared flights to the Caribbean, and joint reservations at exclusive private restaurants, all while Mark was billing my sinking company $800 an hour to destroy my marriage. The final, disgusting detail that turned suspicion into absolute fact: Mark's apartment key code and his private gym locker combination scrawled on the back of the printout. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They had performed a coordinated, calculated, financial execution and were celebrating the spoils. The betrayal was complete, and the financial devastation was absolute. I was a geologist whose foundation had been shattered. I knew I couldn't fight Mark and Eliza in the local court. His influence was too deep, and my money was gone. I was staring down the barrel of personal and corporate bankruptcy. I was late on my rent and contemplating the humiliation of seeking a personal loan from a former competitor when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, starting with the chilling prefix 907 Anchorage, Alaska. Voice on phone. Gravelly, no-nonsense tone: Mr. Thomas Vance. My name is Elias Kovich. I am the executor of the estate of George Vance. I froze. George Vance, my estranged great-uncle, a figure of family mythology. He was the eccentric uncle who, 50 years prior, had turned his back on the family, sold his meager assets, and disappeared into the vast, frozen Alaskan wilderness. I hadn't seen him since I was a child. He was always described as a reclusive man who ran from civilization, Elias Kovich. Mr. Vance, your uncle passed away 4 months ago. His last will and testament specifies that the entirety of his estate be transferred directly to you.
Thomas Vance, we need you here immediately to begin the transfer process.
The estate, I must warn you, is complex and requires specific legal actions. I was profoundly skeptical. A recluse in Alaska? What could he possibly leave? A rusty hunting rifle? A dilapidated cabin? I had $4.2 million stolen from me. I couldn't afford a plane ticket to chase a family myth, but Kovich was persistent and strangely compelling. He noted my current financial distress and offered to fly me up immediately, all expenses paid, citing a clause in George's will, anticipating the heir's possible insolvency. The sheer audacity of the offer, combined with the utter desperation of my life, made the impossible journey the only logical next step. I booked the flight, risking the last shred of my former dignity on a myth. The journey to Anchorage was cold, long, and spiritually draining. Kovich met me at the airport. He wasn't the corporate shark I was used to. He was a grizzled man, a lawyer who smelled of pine and quiet certainty. Wearing clothes more suited to a fishing boat than a boardroom, he drove me far outside the city, past any sign of typical civilization, to a high-security, custom-built industrial vault complex hidden deep in the foothills. He opened a massive, hermetically sealed steel door. Inside, there wasn't gold or cash, but meticulously organized geological equipment. Thousands of core samples and vast, detailed survey ledgers. Elias Kovich. A slight smile, Mr. Vance. Your Uncle George didn't become a recluse. He became a visionary. He left the noise of your world to pursue the one thing he always loved, the earth. He used his geological knowledge to meticulously survey and acquire the mineral rights for one of the largest untapped lithium deposits in North America. Starting back in the late 1970s, I, the geologist, understood the implications instantly. Lithium, the core of the modern tech economy batteries. EVS, renewable energy. Kovich, showed me the final sealed deed and the complex legal paperwork securing the claim. George Vance owned the entire subsurface mineral rights to a 700 square mile tract in the remote Brooks Range. He had quietly secured the land, fought off every major corporation through decades of complex land use litigation, and then he simply waited for the market to catch up to his foresight. Elias Kovich. The value, based on today's explosive market demand for lithium and the independent, high-resolution geological surveys George commissioned before his death, is not millions, Mr. Vance. It's measured in billions. Your inheritance, Thomas, is currently valued conservatively at $3.5 billion. I felt the room tilt violently. Senderwu billion. The $4.2 million stolen by my wife and her lover. The theft that defined my financial ruin was now less than a rounding error in this astronomical reality. The man who was destroyed by betrayal was now the rightful, undisputed owner of an Alaskan industrial empire. My professional discipline, the geology that Elisa and Mark dismissed as worthless, was the very source of my unimaginable wealth. I spent 3 months in Alaska, immersed in the transition. Kovich, who managed George's legal perimeter for years, became my indispensable partner. We established Brooks Range Mining LLC, positioning the company for its inevitable, its massive future. But my focus never strayed from the $4.2 million. The revenge was cold, calculated, and professional. I realized that Mark Halstead, in his arrogant attempt to steal every last penny and legally bury me, had left a fatal legal flaw in the transfer of the $4.2 million. He'd routed the stolen funds through an obscure international shell corporation that was now subject to complex, expensive, and protracted litigation to dissolve. He calculated that I, the broke geologist, would never have the resources to pursue such a messy, long-winded fight. He was wrong. Now, I had $3.5 billion. I returned to my city, not on a commercial flight, but flying into the private municipal airfield on my new corporate, Gulfstream G650, My first appointment was not with Eliza or Mark, but with the top forensic litigation firm in the country. Team Mark Halstead himself had always bragged was too expensive and too ruthless to ever be beaten. Tom, sitting in the firm's luxurious boardroom, I have two requests. First, I want you to assign 20 partners and dedicate all available resources to this matter. I want you to spend whatever it takes to make Mark and Eliza Halstead legally miserable over the stolen $4.2 million. Drag them through every court, every deposition, every forensic audit possible until the cost of their defense exceeds the amount they stole. Senior partner. Looking slightly stunned, we can certainly do that, Mr. Vance. We appreciate the retainer. But what is the second request? Tom, the second request is for Mark Halstead, personally. I want you to send him a certified personal letter via courier. The letter should detail the successful transfer of the $3.5 billion Alaska inheritance. My new title is Chairman of Brooks Range Mining and include a single, final line of text. I am personally funding the lawsuit to recover the $4.2 million you stole. See you in court. Mark. I have all the time and resources in the world. The news hit Mark Halstead like the seismic shift. George Vance predicted in the earth. The man he ruined was now his financial sovereign. He tried to dismiss the Alaska inheritance as a geological fantasy. But the SEC filings and the massive land deeds were indisputable. The media frenzy was instantaneous. Mark Halstead's prestigious career disintegrated as quickly as the reputation of his client. Eliza. The $4.2 million lawsuit became Mark's personal and professional hell. His corporate partners, terrified of the association with a billion-dollar lawsuit, abandoned him. His new lifestyle with Eliza, funded by the stolen money, was exposed. Every single transfer, every fraudulent filing, and every financial decision Mark and Eliza had made was microscopically examined under a microscope funded by billions of dollars of lithium wealth. He realized that the man he thought he'd crushed had returned with the ultimate. Relentless leverage. The final legal victory was absolute. Mark and Eliza were forced to pay back the full $4.2 million with accrued interest and punitive legal penalties, leaving both of them financially decimated and professionally ruined. I didn't care about the recovered $4.2 million. It was the principle that mattered. I used the recovered money to establish a legal defense fund dedicated to helping victims of spousal and corporate financial abuse, a true legacy of integrity. My wife's lawyer was her secret lover. They collaborated to steal $4.2 million, leaving me for dead in my old life. But then Alaska called about my inheritance. The man I was became the custodian of billions, and the first act of my new life was ensuring that the arrogance and calculated betrayal of my enemies paid the ultimate public price. Always remember, never underestimate the quiet ones, especially when the vast, untouched wilderness holds their secret. Their inheritance is measured in billions. If you believe that karma is a multi-billion-dollar slap in the face, share your story in the comments. And if you agree that the ultimate leverage is having all the time and resources in the world, hit that like and subscribe button.